Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze. T-minus 37 seconds.
The fight with growing confidence.
E equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Tear down this weather.
head on. Something happening coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Finding Your Frequency. I am your host, Ryan Treasure. Today is January 24th, and you may not know, but this is our very first live show of 2020, and what a great year we expect to have right here at VoiceAmerica Talk Radio. Last year we did 179 Finding Your Frequency episodes, and so what a great way to start the new year, to really bring in a bang. Have a great person in the studio today. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about technology, all of those, fun things that you guys that are entrepreneurs always, lay in bed at night at 12 o'clock and just think to yourself, what technologies should I be using for my business? What strategies should I be using for my business? So we're going to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit today. But before we get into the guest, I have to take just a couple of seconds out of the show to, number one, thank our sponsor for the show, Podcorn, PODCORN.com. Podcorn is a fantastic website where podcasters can link up with advertisers, and it's a great resource for you guys out there that are doing podcasts or content-based marketing for your businesses to help kind of supplement a little bit of that income, get some revenue generation happening from your radio show or podcast. It's a great marketplace connecting those podcasters to amazing sponsorship opportunities such as host-read ads, interview segments, and topical discussions and more. So big shout out to podcorn.com. We'll talk about them a little bit more later on in the show. Now, on to the other thing. Huge, proud father moment for me this morning. I actually came into the studio a little later than normal because my daughter made the principal's list. And so, man, was I extremely happy. As you guys know, I have a 6-year-old daughter. She's in first grade. We had a little struggles in kindergarten, brand new to school and all those different things. And she's never got lower than a B, even in kindergarten. So I'm extremely proud of her for that. But, with a little extra effort at home, and, we started a new program at home because after doing some interviews last year with some experts in early childhood development, we had a lot of conversations about screen time and, the kids watching television, playing video games, playing on the phone, all that kind of stuff. And so my wife and I, we took a pretty hard stance on limiting screen time, and we came up with a game. And the fun game that we came up with is it's helps you to learn about being an entrepreneur because you have to work for something to earn something. And so we supplemented that with reading books equals screen time. So the more books that you read, the more screen time you can rack up. So screen time is the cash, the capital, the money, and reading is the work. And so it's been very, very helpful. And so very proud of my daughter, Marley, for getting on the principal's list, and just wanted to have that proud dad moment for just a second. So that's why our guest is wondering why I was wearing a visitor sticker in our own building, and that's because I was a visitor at the school earlier today. But big kudos to her. Good job, Marley. Now, let's get into Finding Your Frequency because, I'm all about this. Finding Your Frequency, as you guys know, it's all about that journey, that finding the reason why you do what you do, summoning that intestinal fortitude to move forward and really make a difference in your business, and make a difference in your lives, and, make sure that you're not swinging the axe for somebody else's dollar. So that's definitely an important thing. So today we're going to talk to business and sales expert Blair Singer, who's the founder of the Blair Singer Training Academy and Rich Dad Advisor, best-selling author of 3 Rich Dad Advisor series books, Sales Dogs. You don't have to be an attack dog to be a success in sales. We'll talk about that book, as well as Team Code of Honor and Little Voice Mastery, how to win the war between your ears in 30 seconds or less and have an extraordinary life. Blair, welcome to the show.
Wow, Ryan, it's an honor to be here, and thank you for putting on a show that touches so deeply to helping people find their vision, what they're trying to do.
Well, yeah, we really appreciate you joining us in studio here today. I always love it when people are here with us in the studio, because I feel there's, a different level of energy, a different connection than when we do the phone interviews. And, and I know for you as a speaker, you're always trying to make that connection with those folks as being on stage and trying to get them to overcome their fears, overcome their obstacles, and what you call the self-sabotaging little voice in their heads that prevents them from, engaging that hero within. So I want to start off with one question because it's the premise of the show, and it's what's to be expected by our listeners now that we've been on the air since 2016. But Blair, we want to know how you found your frequency in life and in business, and how did you end up on the path that you are? And just take a couple of moments and tell us about your story.
Well, thanks. And first of all, kudos to you with your daughter. I mean, I know being the father of two great boys, you can be on the principal's list for two different reasons.
the principal's list and the principal's beep list.
Right, exactly. So congratulations on that. But I think it has to do with your question. It has to do with the environment you're brought up in, what you're subjected to, what you witness as a kid, all that plays into effect, And I wish I could tell you that I'm doing what I'm doing now because there was some great plan and I laid it all out, but it wasn't like that at all. I mean, and I think for any entrepreneur listening, to know that the journey, I call it, interesting you talk about it, called the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a journey that's been told, stories that have been told like Ulysses, The Wizard of Oz, Luke Skywalker, all that stuff. And that story's been told for thousands of years. Why? Because everybody listening is on a hero's journey of some sort. The names change, the story changes, but the pattern still remains. You get a calling to do something, you're a little reluctant to do it, you think it's a good idea at the time, you jump into it, all of a sudden all the crap hits the fan, you think, how did I get here? And you go out and you have to slay and you're tested, and you find mentors along the way, you got to slay the dragon, and then you come back. And you come back from your journey and your venture a transformed person. And that story of transformation is really the story. It's not the plan. It's the journey, as everybody says. And, the way I got here was totally by accident. As I was I grew up in the Midwest in Canton, Ohio, and
shout out to Ohio, Aaron.
There you go, right? And home of the Football Hall of Fame. And I just, I was supposed to go into medical school at Ohio State, and I found out halfway through the second semester of school that studying organic chemistry until my eyes bled was not going to work. And I became a political science major.
That was a pretty big shift.
Yeah, right? And so I shifted from there, and what happened was I fell in love. I wish I could tell you that there was a grand plan, but I realized that the weather in Ohio sucked. School didn't teach me anything about making money. And I just decided, I fell in love with a woman from Hawaii and followed her to Hawaii.
It's not a bad place to follow somebody to.
Right? And lived there for 8 years, got married there, got divorced there. But I met Robert Kiyosaki there. That's where I met. Because I realized I had to learn how to sell. I got a job in sales. He was working for Xerox. I was working for a company called Burroughs at the time, now Unisys. And we both were entrepreneurs just starting our first gig. He had his first nylon wallet business, and I had a surf shop. And that's how we met. He came in trying to sell me these Velcro wallets. And I told him, dude, my customers are surfers. They have no money. What would they need a wallet for, right?
No pockets.
Right, no pockets, no money. And I was just trying to make a joke, and he started yelling at me. And I'm going, what the heck? What kind of a sales pitch is this? Just yell at your customer and tell them how stupid they are until they buy, which I did. And we've been.
Did you buy a wallet?
Oh yeah, we bought a whole bunch of them. I never sold any of them, but I bought them. But the benefit out of it is we became great friends and went down this path of an experiment as to whether business development and personal development would work together. I took some very powerful personal development programs way back then because of the divorce and all, losing money and all that. And he suggested go to personal development program. I go, I don't do that sissy stuff, right? But it radically changed my life, radically changed everything we were doing. And so now I could tell you the rest of the story. I'm not going to, but I'm just going to tell you that who could ever predicted all that?
Right.
It's just that if you allow yourself, and you talk about frequencies, if you just learn to trust yourself a little bit and just go with it, go with what the opportunity is, as long as it's just not a stupid idea, but to go with it, and you find yourself in the most amazing places. Fast forward, I'm obviously not in Hawaii anymore, but I went into the air freight trucking business. In the first 9 months, lost $750,000 doing that. Had to turn that around. People started asking me how we turned it around. That was after Hawaii, moving back to LA, and a 5-minute lecture turned into an hour lecture, turned into 3 days, 5 days. So now, in the early 90s, I just run around the world helping entrepreneurs, big business, small businesses, helping them create amazing teams and generate millions of dollars of income into their businesses. These days, because the demand's so great, now what I focus on is teaching the best people to be the best teachers, leaders, and facilitators in the world. So we now have about 500 of them. I have about 500 trainers in about 15 different countries.
So you're instead of you doing all of the legwork as the trainer and teacher, then you're teaching other people the system so then they can go out and be impactful for their companies and they can start their hero journey, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so what happens is that I've learned over the years, and if you're listening to this right now, you're going to learn over the years that a certain type of person ends up gravitating toward you. Different people, even in the same industry, different people with personality. They say birds of a feather kind of flock together. So I just know that whether I'm teaching sales, team development, or whatever, people that have a desire to teach, a desire to support and help a lot of people seem to be what show up. And so now that's a business now, and we help a lot of people become world-class trainers and leaders all over the place.
Well, and I think that's an important point, too, to what you say about, how people gravitate towards those certain scenarios, because I think also from a teaching standpoint or in any business, I mean, you don't want to spin your tires in the mud, either working with somebody who just doesn't get it or who doesn't have, the passion, because you and I know that, you can be the smartest person on the planet, but if you're not willing to put in the groundwork, and put in the effort that is needed to make change happen or to go learn something new or go do something different, then you're going to fail automatically just because you didn't try hard enough.
That's right. And you don't have it's not that maybe your work ethic is good, but you're not going to go at it the same way if you don't, like you say, if you don't have the passion for it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't even know, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And you better have a good reason why you're doing it. Otherwise, you will quit doing it.
Yeah.
And so, long ago, I was influenced, Robert and I were both influenced by a fellow by the name of the late Dr. Buckminster Fuller. And he said a couple things that really changed my life. He said, what can one person do that could make a difference?
Yeah.
That was one thing. And I grew up, date myself, I grew up in the days of, I got to see JFK on a 3-station television set. I got to watch Martin Luther King, Gandhi, these guys, and that message was really clear. What can one person do? So Fuller kind of set the hook. He says, how many people could you serve? What's your mission? What are you here to do? You just here to make money, or are you here to make sense? He said, because the two could be mutually exclusive, and that just completely wrecked my life. But it's turned out to be a great journey.
Yeah, I mean, how awesome is it if you can, come to, quote unquote work every day, but at the same time that you're able to make money, you're also making a difference in other people's lives, not to touch on myself too much because, this is an interview with you, but, it is that way. Sometimes, when I'm here, and I've been at VoiceAmerica for 16 years now, doing internet radio. And for me, it's not necessarily about, yes, I like the fact that I make a living and I can pay my bills and all that fun stuff, but I'm not here for just that. I'm here for these moments that I'm having right now with you. I feel like every time I do an interview with an author, a speaker, an expert in any of the different spaces that there are available, health and wellness, whatever it may be, I feel like that every one of these hours that I get to spend with those people are almost like, little mini personal development, moments that I get to have. And I get to learn so much from other people in those spaces, and then not even secondary to the great and wonderful people that we have at Voice America that are executive producers, engineers, graphics folks, just everybody who has a passion for making this medium really explode. And as you know, podcasting has absolutely exploded over the last couple of years. And, looking back on, the company's founding in 99 and then looking at like, wow, when I started here, the smartphone wasn't a thing. The word podcast didn't exist. And it took us a long time, as you talk about change and and being able to have passion to move forward. It took me a long time to call a radio show a podcast because, like, in my head, I'm like, but it's not a podcast. It's not highly edited. We do these things live and then we just publish them, you know. But it's like when you're doing sales and when you're doing business items, and it's like, well, if you're not speaking the same language as your customers, then you got a problem with communication. And so once we started to embrace that, yes, we do podcasts or we do live podcasts or whatever, things really started to change for us.
Yeah, well, yeah, because what you're doing is you're serving even more, and just for example, a podcast is no longer a podcast. Podcasts can be turned into a video. It can be turned into posters on social media, can be turned into letters, can be turned into email campaigns. You could take one podcast and create 6 to 8 functions out of it to reach millions of people, literally. So what you're describing is you've taken something like doing a radio show and you've given it deeper meaning. You've given it more reach. And so, like I said, what the motivation here is how many people, like Fuller said, how many people can you touch? How many people could you impact? And if enough people created that kind of an impact somewhere in the world, what kind of a world would it be?
Way better.
Way better, right? So,
we would have already gone to Mars.
Exactly. Well, that's my big thing about trying to teach people how to teach, because the way Robert and I teach is totally different than any kind of school teacher or any kind of a lecturer.
Yeah.
And we've learned it over the years how to combine personal development, business development, technical development together, because the problem with learning is not the material. Material is pretty simple. The problem is everybody wants to be in better shape, right? Everybody wants to get rich, right? Simple. To do it is not the hard part. The hard part is a little voice between your ears that puts up the resistance. I can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I don't have time. All that are the garbage. So the way we teach is designed to input the information, but also remove the resistance so they can actually do something with it. And that's why my big thing about education, to what you said, people say we got climate problems, we got financial problems. Only one problem. I know that all those are secondary problems. The biggest problem is a problem of education. There's not one problem on this planet that couldn't be fixed by people that sit down, know how to work together, figure out problems together, cooperate, and do all that stuff. But we're just not taught that in school. We're just not taught it anywhere. So I agree with you. I think that if people get, and that's why at this stage of my career, I'm so passionate about teaching people how to teach so that people naturally can do that, naturally lower the resistance, naturally take the stuff on. That's why we get, like when I do a sales training, it's not uncommon for people to do increase sales 15 to 80% in a matter of 3 to 6 months.
Wow, that every company probably happy for that.
Well, you know what I'm saying? But it's not conventional. It's not conventional.
Yeah, so that's like in your bio. It says that, you're empowering people to achieve peak performance in business, sales, money, teams, relationships, and life.
Right.
And I think that probably is the hardest thing for any person to get over. I mean, I experience it on a daily basis. My biggest crutch is I don't have time. Always, it's like, but I want to make time for my family, and, I want to make time for myself. I want to make time for my hobbies. I told you I like to ride motorcycles, and, so I want to make time for that. But, sometimes you have to prioritize the items that are in your life. And when you think about being of service, and also making money, sometimes you got to set aside, the Sunday morning that maybe you wanted to go ride your motorcycle with your buddies for, a couple of hours of due diligence to get yourself set up for the week, so that way you can be prepared for whatever you're doing.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the things we teach, my trainers that are all over the place, is that you got to have sacred time. One of the things I learned about studying great leaders and myself is that you have got to set aside some sacred time, whether it's 10 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is for you, daily.
Yep.
Daily. Because if you don't, the world will dictate the day to you.
You want to know what's funny? You talk about sacred time. So obviously, I'm a radio guy. I've been in this business my entire adult career since 1997 is when I got home from the military, and I started my radio career, started in AM and FM, and then moved into new media in 2003. And when you talk about that sacred time, you would think that somebody like me is probably after a day of working in radio, like you don't want to listen to radio anymore. But what's really funny is when I drive home from work every day, my 15 minutes of solidarity is sitting in my truck, listening to my favorite radio program that airs from 4 to 6 p.m. And so generally I'm catching like the last 30 minutes of that, like at 5:30-ish or something like that. And my wife will call me from upstairs and be like, hey, are you coming in the house? And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there in just a few minutes. And that's my time, my 30 minutes. I get to listen to these guys that really are a riot. I get to hear some news and, spend that time alone by myself, decompressing from the day, thinking about how the day went. And then I also think about how can I make tomorrow better.
Right. That's right. And I think that if you can, for me, that time comes early in the morning. That kind of time comes around. And for different people, it's different times of day. And early in the morning, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of affirmation, a little bit of, read something motivational and do some journaling, right? And some exercise, right? So my assistant knows nothing gets booked on my calendar during that time unless it's an extreme emergency. Yeah. And I can tell you that with my travel schedule, I mean, I'm on the road more than half the time during half of a year, is I got to do it. And I got to do it. And what I find is the quality of time that I spend with my wife and my kids, and the quality of time I spent with my colleagues and people, much higher quality. Because I don't know it's the amount of time you spend. With a small, when your kids are small, time is critical. But I think that as you get older, it's more about, are you really present with the people you're even talking to?
I think at that point too, and you're right, I have a 6-year-old, so for me, amount of time is kind of important. That's right critical, now. We're trying to, my wife and I are trying to set a high a high level example of understanding certain components of being a human being. And one of those things that's always a challenge, I think it's probably a challenge for adults too, is not allowing your emotions to dictate your behavior. Right. And so that's something that we work really hard at home with our daughter on, because when you're going through everyday life, if you are in a discussion with somebody and it rubs you the wrong way, and then your action then is based upon your emotions, then you're not really thinking through or problem solving in a correct manner. And I think that those are fundamental components. Like you can't learn that. You can't learn that at school.
No. As a matter of fact, you're actually taught almost the opposite at school. No, seriously, they put pressure on you. If you don't get good grades, you're considered an idiot. If you make too many mistakes, you're not going to be successful. When the truth of it is, every entrepreneur listening to this right now knows that the secret to good marketing, to good sales, and to entrepreneurship is you got to make a lot of mistakes and make them quick and learn how to correct from them. But if you're traumatized every time you do that, which is what school would teach you, then you're going to be risk averse. Yep. And then your business is going to fail. And then you're going to be miserable. But the truth of it, what you said is true. We always say when we do sales training, high emotion yields low intelligence. And anytime anybody listen to this, anytime you've ever been angry, I ask you, have you ever made a good decision when you're in the middle of being angry? And I guarantee you the answer is no.
No, I mean, no.
Never.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. But people don't take heed. So that's why when we train people, part of the training and part of education, as you said, is not just about how to use technology. It's how to manage the emotion so you can keep it low, keep your intelligence high, and be able to communicate properly.
Well, and I feel like learning technology is actually easy. If it's like here's a manual on how this digital device works. Okay, well, I can read really well, right? So again, going back to the 6-year-old, like in this foundational component, again, if you can't read,
that's a problem.
You can't do anything, And so if you can read books and you can manage your emotions, well, the sky's the limit.
So let's take a look at the manual. So you open the manual and it's like thick and and you get bored. Your little voice goes, this is too slow. I don't want to do it. So now all of a sudden your emotion starts to take over. I'm just going to skip steps. I'm just going to get past. This is crazy. And so now the emotion's coming up. You're going to jump ahead. You're going to make some mistakes you don't need to make. Or the technology breaks down in the middle of you. That never happens, right? No, all of a sudden, your laptop's not working properly. Internet's cutting out. Then you lose it. Oh, great! Now, right? I got time. So now your emotion's up again. Yep. Your intelligence has gone down. So even in something as simple as that, if you can just learn to be present, Buddha and all these guys, all taught about being present, being centered. I used to think it was kind of hokey stuff myself until I realized that my life got so complex that if I don't do that, I won't survive it.
No, you're 100% correct. And it's funny that you say that. You thought that was hokey stuff. We have an empowerment channel,
right?
And so sometimes I listen to some of the content on the empowerment channel, and I go, "Wow, are you kidding me?" But then. When you stop for just a second and kind of think about some of those principles that some of those people are talking about empowering your life, empowering yourself to do and be better and all those things, they're actually correct. And I think sometimes people just have this veil of cloud that's in their brain somewhere. I don't know where it comes from or how it's there.
I know. Well, I had it too. I had it too. When Kiyosaki way back when said you really need to go to a personal development program, I go, I don't do that sissy stuff.
Yeah,
that's for wimps. I don't do that kind of stuff. He goes, no, it'll really help you, and it did. It changed my life because I got a chance to take a look at the one thing in common with all the success, failure, money made, lost, heartache. The one thing in common with everything was me. And while it seems like obvious, at that moment in my life, that was a revelation. And somehow what was going on over here was creating all of that and attracting all of that over here. And that's the big change.
Yeah, and that's really similar to like the book The Secret. If you have all of this cloudiness that's happening and you can't really see through that, then how do you get the frequencies to align where you have good things gravitating towards you instead of bad things gravitating towards you?
Right.
I mean, I think that's the important thing. Well, hey, Blair, what I want to do is number one, I want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, and then we'll take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back on the backside of that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about your books. I got some questions here for you as well, talking about your book about the attack dog. I think that's interesting, so I want to kind of dive into that a little bit. But ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Ryan Treasure. Again, big shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Podcorn. What a really cool service that Podcorn has. We've been in this business since the beginning, since audio's been online. I mean, VoiceAmerica and Boombox Radio by AOL were the first two things that were happening in 1999 when this thing launched. And what a great time. And now is even better time for radio shows and podcasters because there's so many new pieces of technology that are out there. I actually got involved with Podcorn because I got an email that was just saying, hey, we see that you have a podcast, you should check this thing out. And I went in and signed up on podcorn.com and made myself an account. And when you log into the system, it's super cool because it automatically starts showing you, okay, here are some sponsors or advertisers or even paid interviews that they have that are in there for people who are looking for exposure, whether it be other podcasts or other brands and services and such. And so as I'm scrolling through there, I thought it was really cool. And so we decided to start working with them in the capacity because their marketplace is really connecting podcasters to sponsorship opportunities with the host reads and those interview segments I was talking about and topical discussions. And there's no middleman at all, right? I just log into the Podcorn and I look through the list of available advertising. I send them a note about why I think that I would be a good fit for this. They make it super easy to. I don't even have to type anything, right? I just log in. There's a record button. I can record myself. I just talk to them and tell them in my own words versus typing it all out, which is wonderful because that's way less time. Yeah. And basically give them my pitch. And I say, hey, I'm Ryan Treasure. I host Finding Your Frequency. I think we'd be a good fit for this, and this for these reasons. Send it off to them and then wait for them to reply. And it's just a really easy, seamless component, no middleman, payouts right to PayPal, so I don't have to wait. As soon as you upload the ad read and show them that you've done it, they pay you. So you're not waiting for net 30s or net 60s on payments. As you know, that's terrible to wait for that, right, Blair?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So definitely, if you guys are doing a radio show or a podcast, go check out podcorn.com, podcorn.com, and go check it out. The marketplace's mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control over how and when you monetize. So make sure you click on the link in the show notes. If you're listening on Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, or any other podcast location, the link will be right there in the description. You guys can go check it out. So definitely check out Podcorn, podcorn.com. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Blair Singer, business and sales expert and author, a little bit more about some of the books that he's created, and we're going to find out, what are these dog types? What do they mean? We'll be right back right after this on Finding Your Frequency.
Today, many doctors prescribe basic pharmaceuticals to their patients who aren't feeling well or have various aches or pains. Is this the right course of action for all patients? Definitely not. Find out about healthy, natural ways to help you feel your best by tuning into the CBD Ed Show with host Edward Cheney. Ed will explain full-spectrum CBD, where the whole hemp plant can be used for treatment, and answer all of your questions about CBD and natural treatment in general. Listen Fridays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Variety.
Something's happening coming up on staging.
You're tuned into Finding Your Frequency with hosts Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. Connect with the show. Call in to 1-866-472-5788. That's 1-866-472-5788.
Welcome back to Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Ryan Treasure, and as you guys know, I love Finding Your Frequency Fridays. Number one, it ends the week for us because then we get to go spend the weekend with our family and our loved ones. But before we get to do so, we get to find out about how other people found their frequency in life and in business and decided to follow their passion and do what we're doing. Today, we're here with business and sales expert and founder of the Blair Singer Training Academy and Rich Dad Advisor, Mr. Blair Singer. Thank you again for joining us today.
It's an honor. And it's a gas.
Yeah, I think we're having a great time here in the studio. And, you know, before we went to commercial break, we were kind of chatting a little bit about some of the books that you've created and written. I want to talk about the first book that is in my list. It may not be the first book you wrote, but it's the first one in my list, only because this book is great. It's called Sales Dogs. You don't have to be an attack dog to be successful in sales. And, you know, I didn't get a chance to read the whole book because I think I got it on Wednesday, but I was kind of skimming through the book, and what I found really interesting was that you were kind of pairing up like human being personality types with types of dogs,
yes.
Which I thought was really interesting. And so why don't explain that a little bit, how a golden retriever equals what type of human being, and how and why did you come up with that?
Well, first of all, it was my first book, and the reason is because sales equals income. You know, I travel around the world. Anytime I meet somebody who's not happy with their income, not happy with their lifestyle, a business that's struggling, it's usually because that person or that business doesn't know how to sell, or they think it's not important, or the product will sell itself. So that was the first book. But what I found is for small, medium business guys, a lot of times the barrier was not the technique. They just had little voices going on, like, what if they don't like me, and I don't want to be pushy, and all this stereotypical image of an attack dog. So Kiyosaki and I sat down, this was in Singapore back in the 90s, and we were just over a couple pitchers of beer. And we talked about it, and we were just joking around and said, you know, there's really that attack dog image is only one stereotypical image, that you got to be aggressive, never take no for an answer. And so I came up with this whole concept of sales dogs, that there's actually 5 different personality types, all of which could be highly successful in generating income. The attack dog is what we call the pit bull, right? Yeah. Stereotypical, and nobody wants you in a room full of people. How many would be a pit bull? Nobody wants to raise their hand. That would be a few brave guys, right? But then I said, there's others. There's the poodle, who's the charming schmoozer, loves to hang around, network with people. You know, always looking good, right? Yeah. Then there's the Chihuahua. You know, these are the data freaks, man. They're YouTube and Googling, you know, Twittering everything, right? And each one of these personality types has a given strength. That if you play to your strength, or to your point, you play to your natural frequency, you can build a lot of trust really quickly and make a lot of money. The golden retriever is that person that loves to serve people. Typically see a lot of real estate agents or retrievers. You know, they'll do anything. They kind of operate off of the law of reciprocity. If you give enough to people, serve them enough, they'll turn around and grant you some business. Okay. And then, of course, there's the basset hound. They have those big, you know, the hush puppy, big droopy eyes. Their ears. Right. Yeah. They love you no matter what. They love you, right? And these are the people that are really good one-on-one rapport builders. So people say, well, which one's more successful? I go, they're all successful. It's just when you're trying to be, if you're a poodle trying to be a pit bull, that ain't going to work. But by the same token, if you're talking to a pit bull, you better know what language that they appreciate so you can talk to them in their language. So the book was just a fun way to disarm that little voice and take the fear out of it. And we just found that people loved it. And it's just kind of the basis of helping people increase their sales.
So let me kind of put a scenario together. If you're in a room with 5 people who are all salespeople, how do you identify what is their sales type if they're the attack dog or the poodle or whatever? Because I would imagine just like interpersonal communications, you have this idea of who you are, right? Then it's like,
well, hopefully,
right, and then it's what do other people think I am, and then what are you actually?
Exactly. Well, right. I mean, you could pick it up in people's language. Obviously, a pit bull is going to be real aggressive. What's the bottom line? Get to the point. The poodle is going to be, what's everybody else doing? What's the trend? They're looking for social proof out there. Where the Chihuahua just wants the facts. Okay, and the Golden Retriever is all about the relationship, and the Basset Hound is building the empathy, one-on-one trust. So you can usually pick up on that within the first minute or so.
So have you ever had a mutt?
Oh yeah,
like somebody who's like, they just switch gears. They can be an attack dog. They can be a poodle.
Totally. We're all
the Swiss
mutts.
Army blade.
That's exactly
Swiss Army knife of sales.
Swiss Army knife. That's great. I'm using that one. Do it. Okay, but I do it. I say, so how many of you are this? How many are that? How many are a mutt? And everybody raised their hand. I said, that's the point. You have all these things. We all have the ability. But it's just finding the one that you're comfortable in, particularly in that moment, and particularly with the person that you're with.
Do you guys ever talk about like NLP or neuro-linguistic,
totally.
Right? Especially in sales, right? Because one of the things that I've noticed, I don't technically do sales, but I guess no matter what you do in life, you're probably selling at some point something. You know what I mean? You're selling yourself.
That's not what I've been witnessing for the last hour in here. You've been selling like crazy, but it's not the stereotypical sale. It's not like trying to push something down somebody's throat. You come from your passion. You want to help a lot of people. You want to serve a lot of people. That's all it is. Yeah, there's some techniques on how to close. There's some techniques and all that stuff. But that varies depending upon who you are and the setting that you're sitting in. So I think that everybody can sell. I'll bet you your daughter can sell.
I know she can sell.
That's right. So they're the best salespeople on the planet. So everybody's got it in them. It's just over time you get a little gun shy. They going to like me? What do they think of me? Just like what you said. And when you can just learn to get comfortable with it, then sales increase. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's funny that you said my daughter can sell. She could sell herself to anyone, anytime. She is so good at it.
I know.
And
I've not met.
She's going to be trouble for me when she's a teenager. I can already tell.
That's right. I've not met a 4 to 6 year old that could not sell. I've just never met one.
So when you talk about all of these different dog scenario types, and I know a lot of people work in groups and in teams, especially in sales. You might have 4 or 5 people on a sales team. When those companies split into teams to be more efficient with projects and sales, what is needed for the proper team to be successful? I mean, outside of understanding who you are and what type of personality you have, but when you take the pit bull and the poodle and all of them and you put them all in a room together and they all have to get along for one goal, which is the CEO says, okay, group of 5 people, I would like this.
Right.
This is your objective.
This
your
is
goal.
Our sales goal, or this is the project, or whatever it is. Yeah,
this is your benchmark,
and that's why I wrote the second book, which was Team Code of Honor. Okay, Team Code of Honor. First thing I want to say about sales. One thing I learned a long time ago when I first got into sales, that sales equals income, but the most important, most difficult sale of all is you selling you to you. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You telling you to you, and what I mean by that is when you get knocked back and knocked back and knocked back, doubt starts to seep in. And you go, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Am I doing the right thing? That's when salesmanship begins, because the toughest sell of all is not selling to the customer. It's you selling to yourself. So what happens now when you put people into a group, and I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, it totally does. I laughed because one of my first jobs when I was a kid, I was a door-to-door salesman. I used to go to this building and they would give me a bag, right? And in the bag would be like lotions and different things. And it was like, all right, you can do one of 2 things. Come back when your bag is empty, or come back when your bag is empty. right? And I literally would go door to door, and those types of emotions are there constantly because
That's right.
you're going into an office building that you don't even know if solicitation is even okay. I mean, this is back in the 90s, right? And you're like, well, am I going to get in trouble for even going in here?
Right.
And I finally got to the point where I just didn't care what the sign said. I just went in anyways. I was going to wait for them to tell me to leave before I was going to stop myself from entering.
Funny you say that because I always tell the story that when we first started at Burroughs, we weren't. They had a deal. You had 6 weeks to sell $10,000 worth of desktop calculators door to door. If you could do that in 6 weeks, then they would send you to sales training. And I'm going, wait, don't I get the sales training first? And they go, no. If you can't do this, we're not going to waste our money on you. That's how it was back then.
Yeah.
And I remember that one day I made 68. I counted them 68 cold calls in one day and sold nothing. Absolutely nothing. But the most important sale of all is I made it through 68 calls without giving up. That was the important thing. The following day I would close some deals. But that's your.
Well, that's because you got through all your no's on that day.
That's part of it. But after a while, I didn't give a crap what people were thinking.
Yeah.
They were, get out of here. We hate what you're doing, and all that. And after a while, I'm going, okay, what else can they throw at me? I said, I'm going to show you a demo of this thing. It's going to blow your socks off. And finally, somebody said, okay, show me the demo. Then I was totally screwed because I didn't even know how to operate the equipment. Then they'd kick me out. So it was like, but it was the most important sales training of all. And what happens is when you get into teams, you have people. You have 5 people on a team. You're saying, okay, so you have 5 different sets of emotional, and psychotic baggage, all sitting on that team at the same time.
Yeah,
and so that becomes a problem. So one of the things that I learned is every great team, every great organization, religion, whatever, has something called, I call it a code of honor. But it's a set of rules, like the 10 Commandments, a set of rules.
Yep.
Okay? And these rules embody the values of the team and hold people together. So and whenever I work with a company, whether it's been Singapore Airlines, Morgan Stanley, IBM, L'Oreal brands, or even small businesses, the first thing we do is establish the rules, the code of honor. Because when it gets hot, people want to jump ship. But if the rules hold them in there, then we can work through it. Yeah, we can work through it. Like, everybody takes responsibility.
It's like a containment field.
Totally. Yeah. But it's one that everybody agrees to. Because in a sane moment, everybody always agrees to the 10 Commandments, right? But when the stuff starts hitting the fan, the emotion goes up, intelligence goes down. The purpose of the code of honor is to protect me, from myself. Because I know that I don't need any competition out there. I am my own worst enemy half the time. And so that's why what'd you call it, a containment field?
Yeah.
I love that. I'm using that one too. Okay, so the containment field is critical if you're going to put a team together. Otherwise, particularly on a sales team, because everybody's all over the place, you got to come together with a basic set of rules of how we conduct ourselves with each other. Yeah. Everybody agrees to that. Now we can push forward.
That's amazing. And please use containment field. Please allow my Nerdist to help you out in any way. I love sci-fi stuff, so we'll probably have more of those to come down the line. As a business owner and an entrepreneur and working through several levels of different types of sales and leadership roles, what was the hardest thing that you ever dealt with in business? And I know kind of maybe what you're going to say, dealing with myself or getting through that hurdle, but not from that perspective. Just as a business owner, like what was one of the hardest things you ever had to deal with? Besides Robert yelling at you about the wallets.
That was actually funny. That wasn't so hard. Actually, it forged a great friendship, so that was awesome. I think that when my first big business, and when I had a trucking business many years ago, and we faced financial ruin several times, and it was, I got like no sleep for a year. I think it was just really hard. Every day was a challenge. Every day was hard. But that's when I learned about code of honor, because the only thing that held us together was a simple set of rules that we had. I was going to shut down the business. And I remember my accounting manager came to me. She goes, "Don't close the business." We were down $750,000.
That's a lot of money.
Well, what happens? We used a factoring company that basically you give them your billing and they do the collection for you and turn your cash in 7 days. So
you're not waiting for net 30s and 60s.
Right. Yeah, and they take a percentage, but the problem was they collected the money and then they went out of business and took all the money with them. So we were like, oh my God. So we were left holding the bag. And so I was going to shut it down, and my accounting manager, she says, look, we'll work 2 weeks for free if we have to. Turn this around. I go, what? Free? What are you talking about? They go,
are you like, is that even legal?
Right? And it was like, and it was just such a moving, humbling experience. And we turned it around. And that's the story that I tell. We began to turn that thing around, and I think that was rough. But the one thing I've learned in the most difficult situations is when you obviously learn the most. Number one, that seems obvious, but it's also where you find good partners. You know, there's an old adage that says you can't do a good deal with a bad partner, right? But in a bad deal is where you find good people. Because who stands up? I think the second one, we had a franchise back in the early 2000s, and the franchise blew up, and it was a partnership issue. And without getting into all of that, that was probably one of the most painful experiences because it's your dream. This is what I wanted to do, and the thing just blew up and split apart and disintegrated, and it was painful.
Oh, I bet.
Very painful. But you know what? You just take quitting off the table. Quitting just doesn't become an option. Maybe you got to change what you're doing. Maybe shut this down and go this way. But you just don't. You're not going to fold up your tent and run away.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me, even to this day, sometimes it gets tough, and you go, I don't want to be part of this anymore. But that's why I have a personal code. My wife and I have a code of honor. We have a code that says, no matter what happens, we're not going anywhere. We'll work it out. We never go to bed in the middle of an argument. Things like this that are designed to hold you together in those critical moments.
Yeah, no, well, very, very well said. When you told that story, I couldn't help but think about that accounting person. Are you still friends with them?
I haven't seen actually.
Because how awesome is that somebody who works for you and their employer is so passionate about what they do and the ability to know that they can turn it around. That they're like, we'll work for free, man.
Well, you get the whole scenario. I mean, most of the people, about 30, 40 people in my company, and they're mostly Samoan, Tongan, Mexican, African American, big dudes, right? And she was I think the wife of one of the assistant warehouse supervisor, big Samoan guy, right? And it's like, so they go, we'll turn around and there was another corollary to that. Tote, the assistant warehouse supervisor, comes to me. He goes, you know how to sell. You teach us how to sell. We'll turn this thing around. We'll give it a shot. He goes, besides, if you quit, we will come find you. So it's like, I'm going, okay. So there was some intense motivation there, and we did. They were amazing. We were at LAX airport. We were sending out pizzas to all the shippers and stuff like that, and we were able to turn around.
That's awesome. It's 2020 this year. It's a new decade. I woke up on January 1st and I was like, wow, new hour, new decade, new minute, new lots of stuff in 2020. I suppose there's probably going to be some pretty cool technology that's going to come out in the next 10 years. But the reason I'm bringing it up is, it's 2020 and there's technology everywhere. But, for you as an entrepreneur, what kind of ways have technology impacted your ability to become or be successful or generate more revenue?
Well, what I love about technology from a sales and marketing perspective is it used to be if you're going to be good at marketing, you had to be a good copywriter. You had to be a really good wordsmith, be able to write good marketing copy to send out either in regular mail or email or whatever. And that's tough. It's not easy. But now with video and social media, all you got to do is be you. I mean, the real you. We do a program where I have people who've never done any social media posts, do a simple video just why you're in the business you're in.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I can't do it. It's not professional. It's not. And they are blown away the next day when they see all the comments like, thank you so much. That was so heartfelt. We want to do more business with you. So I think that what technology's done is it's taken the bandwidth and expanded to the point where now you can put your message to the world as you. You don't need a fancy copywriter. Just be yourself and just follow some basic techniques of marketing and sales. But I think that innovation has taken it from in the hands of only those great people that know how to market back home to every entrepreneur that has passion for what they do. I think that's the biggest change.
Yeah, totally. I am I told you earlier, I'm a sci-fi junkie, so of course I'm a tech junkie. Everything I touch, I'm all about technology, and I assist with marketing. I don't like. You know what? Here's the thing: is I like all the stuff. I don't really like to look at the data that much. I just like to, the data for me is the middle ground, and I'm definitely a mutt in some circumstances because I really am like a tack dog because I just really want to get there, get done. Let's get this thing done. I want to get to the bottom line, but then I know that sometimes you can't always get to the bottom line. You can't work that way with certain individuals, and you have to kind of switch up your tonality and your approach based on who you're dealing with.
That's it.
So I'm the chameleon. Anyways, what was your greatest success, and why?
In business or in life?
I don't think they're connected. I think it's what is your biggest success to you?
Yeah. Well, I've just had so many. I'm just blessed. So that's why I was trying to say what category. I think that the biggest wins that I've had are today. Being here with you right now, I just take a look at all the crap that I've been through, the ups and downs, all the people I've met. I just feel extremely blessed to be surrounded with some amazing people. People that you would know, people you wouldn't know, people in 15 different countries, to be able to really feel like you can actually make a difference in a lot of people's lives, that people that I'll never even meet. And so I think it's not like an event. I mean,
a culmination.
It's a culmination. It is. And I think that if you can take a look at least for me, when I do my daily gratitude journal in the morning, what am I most grateful for? And at the end of the day when I do it, what am I most grateful for? I'm grateful for the day. I'm grateful that I had a day full of wins, and that's it. That's it for me. And I'm grateful for all the great teachers, amazing mentors that I've had over the years, and they just give me win after win. So it's hard to put a finger on one of them.
No, I think that was eloquently said because it's not one win that establishes who and what you are. It's the culmination of many wins and, a lifetime of experience, a lifetime of learning, a lifetime of, putting yourself to the test, putting a little pressure on yourself to make yourself better. And I think that a lot of people get lost in the minutia of every day, and they forget about that, if you ever want to become better at something or anything, whatever it is, you've got to step outside of your comfort zone and experience a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress, right? Because I think that's the way you learn.
That's it. And there's two ways to step out of your comfort zone. One is to say, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. And I wish I could tell you that I do that, but I don't. I just happen to have this naive outlook on life even after all these years. And then and I think, wow, it seems like a good idea. And then you jump out of it and you realize, what was I thinking at the time? And then you make the best out of it. So that's the other way out of the comfort zone.
That's awesome. Blair Singer, business and sales expert, Rich Dad advisor, and best-selling author of 3 Rich Dad series. Thank you so much for joining us today on Finding Your Frequency. We appreciate you.
It's an honor. And thank you so much for doing what you do for so many people out there.
Oh, I thank you. That makes me feel really good. Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned in to Finding Your Frequency right here on Voice America Talk Radio on the Variety Channel. We're going to be here next week with another fantastic show. I want you guys to make sure you follow us all over the interwebs at Radio Ryan 1, at Jeff Spinney 2, at Voice America TRN. We're all over that Twitter game. Hit me up on LinkedIn if you have any ideas for anything you'd like to hear on the radio show. We appreciate all of you guys listening to the radio show. Go check out the website, findingyourfrequency.net, and we'll be here again next week right here on Finding Your Frequency. I'm Ryan Treasure, and we're out.